You're done here, Carter. Leave the keys and my property before I call security. The words cut through the morning air like a blade. For 5 years, Michael Carter had driven that car, guarded that family, and raised that boy as if he were his own. But in a single accusation, a missing watch, the billionaire he served stripped him of his dignity, his livelihood, and the only home he'd known. The staff froze. Michael said nothing. He simply placed the keys on the hood, calm even in humiliation, because truth doesn't need to shout. But as he turned to leave, a voice shattered the silence. "Dad!" Every head turned. William Drake's son, Ethan, wasn't running to his father. He was running to the man being cast out. And what no one in that mansion knew was that the moment they chose pride over truth, they were about to lose everything money could never buy. This is Hidden Black Echoes, where the stories of struggles are told, the rise and the voice of those the world tried to silence. If you believe love and loyalty are worth more than money, hit like and subscribe. Because in the next few minutes, you'll see how one man's quiet integrity broke through arrogance, exposed truth, and changed a child's heart forever. The morning sun glared off the polished glass of the Drake estate. The mansion, perched on the hillside, was a monument to wealth. Tall gates, manicured gardens, and silence so heavy it could make anyone feel small. In the driveway, a black luxury car gleamed under the light. Michael Carter stood beside it, hands clasped behind his back, uniform crisp, posture steady. For 5 years, he had driven this car, opened those doors, and waited in that same spot. 5 years of loyalty, 5 years of quiet service. Today, the air felt different, tense, uneasy. From inside the house came the sound of hurried footsteps. William Drake appeared, sharp suit, cold expression, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was clipped and angry. He ended the call and turned toward Michael, eyes narrowed. "My watch," he said flatly. "It's gone." Michael blinked, unsure he'd heard correctly. William's tone sharpened. "The platinum one. I left it in the car yesterday. Now it's missing." Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "Sir, I cleaned the car last night, same as always. Nothing unusual." "Don't lie to me," William snapped. "No one else uses that car." "It's you, Carter. Just you." The staff nearby froze, heads lowered, afraid to breathe. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Michael stood still, his silence not from guilt, but from disbelief. He had served this family through rain, through sickness, through grief. He had watched over the boy when his mother died. He had never once taken anything that wasn't his, but none of that mattered now. William's pride was louder than reason. "You've been with us long enough," he said coldly. "Maybe too long. I trusted you, a mistake I won't repeat." Michael spoke quietly. "Sir, I've never stolen a thing in my life." "Then where is it?" "I don't know, sir." William's hand sliced the air. "Enough. You're done here. Leave the keys and go." The words landed like a blow. Michael reached into his pocket, pulled out the car keys, and placed them gently on the hood. The gesture was calm, respectful, but his eyes carried a weight that only years of quiet dignity could hold. He gave a small nod. "Understood, sir." As he turned to walk away, the front door burst open. A small voice echoed through the courtyard. "Dad!" Everyone turned. Ethan Drake ran across the stone path, backpack swinging, hair tousled. His face lit up with relief as he spotted Michael. He didn't run to his father. He ran straight to the chauffeur. Michael knelt instinctively, arms opening just in time to catch the boy. Ethan clung to him, burying his face in his shoulder, tears wetting the dark fabric of the uniform. William froze, his anger faltering for the first time. "Ethan," he started, voice uncertain. "Come here." "That's not—" But the boy shook his head. "No." "Don't make him go, Dad!" The word echoed in the courtyard, sharp, pure, and heavy with truth. Gasps rippled among the staff. A gardener dropped his tools. The housekeeper covered her mouth. William's expression shifted from shock to confusion to something deeper. Fear. Michael didn't move. He simply held the boy tighter, steadying him, eyes closed for a brief moment that said more than words ever could. He had been the one there through the nightmares, the one who packed lunches, fixed toy cars, and taught Ethan how to tie his shoes when no one else had the time. To the world, he was just the driver. To the boy, he was home. When Ethan finally loosened his grip, Michael placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You'll be all right," he whispered softly. "You're stronger than you think." But the boy only cried harder, shaking his head. William stood motionless, pride cracking at the edges. For the first time, the billionaire saw what his money had blinded him to, the bond his own son had built with another man. Michael straightened, looking at William with calm eyes. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. He simply said, "Take care of him." Then he walked away, leaving behind the only job he'd ever loved, and the only child who had ever called him Dad. The sound of the car gate closing was the only thing that broke the silence. And for the first time, the billionaire's mansion felt completely empty. The morning after Michael's dismissal, the Drake mansion was quieter than usual. Breakfast was untouched. The house staff moved carefully, and the sound of laughter, once common when the chauffeur arrived, was gone. William sat at the head of the long dining table, coffee cooling beside a stack of untouched files. Across from him, Ethan stared blankly at his plate, pushing food around without eating. His eyes were red from crying. William cleared his throat. "He's not coming back, son." Ethan didn't respond. "He broke my trust," William added, trying to make the words sound firm, but they came out hollow. The boy kept his gaze on the table. "You broke mine." The words were quiet, but they hit harder than any shout could. William looked away, unable to face the truth in his son's eyes. That day, as the mansion went about its usual rhythm, memories kept replaying in William's mind, the kind he'd never paid attention to before. He remembered the mornings when he'd leave early for meetings, and Michael would be the one to pack Ethan's lunch. He remembered birthday mornings when Michael was already there before sunrise, helping set up decorations his own father never had time to hang. And the nights, those long, quiet nights when he'd return from the office to find his son asleep on the couch, resting against the chauffeur's arm, storybook still open on his lap. It was Michael who'd taught the boy to tie his shoes. Michael who attended every school recital when William's schedule didn't allow it. Michael who'd once carried Ethan into the hospital in the middle of the night after a fever spiked, while William had been across the world on business. Somewhere in those moments, a man paid to serve had become something more. And William, buried in his empire, had missed it entirely. By evening, the mansion felt heavier. Ethan sat by the window holding the toy car Michael had given him, a small black sedan with worn paint and chipped edges. It was the only toy that ever calmed him. The housekeeper, Mrs. Lang, found him there and hesitated before speaking. "He's been asking for him all day," she said softly. William nodded, guilt flickering behind his eyes. "He'll forget." "Children do." Mrs. Lang looked at him, pity in her voice. Not the ones who were loved, sir." Her words lingered long after she left. Meanwhile, across town, Michael Carter sat in a modest one-bedroom apartment, the kind that echoed with quiet. His uniform hung neatly on the chair, pressed even though there was no job to wear it to. He stared at a framed photo on the table. Ethan sitting on his shoulders, both of them smiling beneath the summer sun. That picture had been taken 2 years earlier, at the boy's 7th birthday party. William hadn't attended. He'd been on a flight to Singapore. Michael remembered how Ethan had spent the whole day asking if his father would come, and how, by evening, he'd stopped asking altogether. He'd taken Ethan for ice cream instead. They'd sat by the park, dripping cones in hand, laughing like any father and son would. Now those memories ached like an open wound. He hadn't stolen anything from William Drake, not money, not possessions. But he had something far more valuable, his son's trust. And for that, he'd been cast aside. Days turned into a quiet pattern. Ethan refused to ride in the car with the new driver. He spoke little at school, his teachers noticing the sudden change. At home, he grew quieter still, sleeping with the toy car clutched to his chest every night. William tried to fill the gap, reading to him, joining dinners, canceling meetings, but nothing worked. The silence between them grew heavier, colder. He began to notice things he'd never seen before. The way Ethan flinched at loud voices. The way he looked toward the gate every morning as if waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. For the first time, the billionaire felt powerless. His money couldn't fix this. His pride couldn't hide it. He had taken away the one person who made his son feel safe. That night, when he passed by Ethan's room, he heard faint sobs. He opened the door quietly. The boy was sitting by the window again, whispering to the stars. "Please come back, Dad." The words froze William in place. For a long time, he just stood there, a father realizing that love had been given freely in the one place he'd never thought to look. And as the lights of the city glowed beyond the glass, William Drake finally understood the truth he'd spent his life avoiding. He was rich enough to buy the world, but too poor to be called Dad. The rain came without warning. Dark clouds rolled over the city, thunder muttering low in the distance. Inside the mansion, the world felt as cold as the weather outside. Silent hallways, untouched meals, and a boy who no longer smiled. William Drake stood at his office window, watching the storm roll in. His reflection in the glass looked tired, older, hollow. The phone on his desk buzzed. A message from the housekeeper. "Ethan didn't go to school today. He says he doesn't feel like talking." William closed his eyes. Each day, without, Michael seemed to strip another piece of color from the house. He turned toward his wife's old study, a room he hadn't entered in years. It still smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Her photos lined the shelves, frozen smiles of a woman whose warmth once filled this place. He ran his fingers across her desk, the wood still smooth beneath the dust. As he opened a drawer, something caught his eye. A small envelope, its edges worn, his name written in her elegant script. "To William, for when you finally stop running." His heart skipped. He tore it open and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting trembled slightly, as if written during her final days. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And maybe by now you've buried yourself in work again. But before you lose what's left of your heart, I need you to remember one thing. Ethan doesn't need a perfect father. He just needs someone who shows up. If you can't do that, promise me you'll let Michael help. He understands Ethan in ways neither of us ever could. He sees the world the way our boy does, not as something to conquer, but as something to protect. He's more than a chauffeur, William. He's family. If you're still watching, you can feel that moment when pride starts to melt into realization. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever seen truth rise quietly above power. Because what happens next will prove that character outlasts privilege every time. William's throat tightened. He sank into the chair, letter trembling in his hands. He remembered that hospital room, the beeping machines, her fading voice. He had promised her he'd take care of Ethan, but he hadn't realized that promise included letting another man help raise his son. Now, the truth was staring him in the face. Michael hadn't overstepped. He'd kept his word, her word. That night, William found himself in the garage, staring at the empty space where the car used to be parked. He saw memories instead of shadows. Michael teaching Ethan how to check the oil, Michael opening the door with a smile, Michael driving through rainstorms just to pick Ethan up early from school. The man he'd accused of theft had stolen nothing. It was William who had taken something, peace, love, trust, and thrown it away. Across town, Michael Carter sat in his small apartment, finishing a simple dinner. A knock at the door broke the silence. When he opened it, a man stood there, soaked from rain, expensive coat dripping on the mat. William Drake. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Finally, William exhaled. "You made her a promise," he said quietly. "Didn't you?" Michael met his gaze. "Yes, sir." "I did." "What kind of promise?" "To never leave Ethan," Michael said. His voice was steady, heavy with truth. "She asked me to stay as long as he needed me. Not as a driver, as family." William's jaw clenched. "Why didn't you tell me?" "She wanted you to hear it when you were ready," Michael replied. "I guess that time just came." For the first time, the billionaire had no reply. The man he'd dismissed as replaceable had been the one keeping his family together all along. As William turned to leave, his voice cracked slightly. "He hasn't smiled since you left," he said. "He barely speaks." Michael looked down. "He's scared. Not of losing me, of losing safety. Kids don't need much, sir. Just someone who means what they say." William nodded slowly, his eyes tired, his pride finally breaking. "I'll bring him to you tomorrow." Michael shook his head. "No, sir. He doesn't need to come to me. I'll come home." When the door closed behind William, the rain began to ease. For the first time in weeks, Michael allowed himself to breathe. And across the city, as lightning faded into soft gray light, William Drake sat alone in his car, gripping the letter from his wife. He whispered to the empty seat beside him. "I see it now. You were right. Family isn't blood. It's the people who stay." The days that followed were heavy with silence. The laughter that once filled the Drake mansion had vanished, replaced by the low hum of machines and the whisper of nurses moving quietly down the hall. Ethan lay in bed, pale and motionless, his small frame swallowed by blankets. His eyes stayed half open, staring somewhere far away, somewhere no one else could reach. The doctor's words were careful, measured, but they fell like stones. "There's no infection, no physical illness. This is emotional withdrawal. His mind is protecting him from something too painful to process." William sat beside the bed, suit wrinkled, eyes red. "You're saying my son chose not to wake up?" The doctor sighed. "He's not unconscious. He's retreating." Retreating. The word echoed through William's mind. He reached for his son's hand, feeling the faint warmth beneath his fingers. "I'm here, Ethan," he whispered. "Please, just look at me." But the boy didn't move, didn't blink, didn't respond. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic beep of the monitor beside him. Steady, cold, mechanical. That night, the mansion felt suffocating. The lights were dim, the corridors endless. William wandered through each room, haunted by memories he had ignored. Laughter echoing in the halls, small footsteps running toward the front door every time the car pulled in. He ended up in the garage again. The space felt like a shrine to everything he'd lost. The scent of polished leather, the faint oil marks on the floor, reminders of Michael's quiet dedication. On the dashboard of the parked car lay something he hadn't noticed before, a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully. The handwriting was neat, familiar. "If anything happens, tell him I'll always be close." Dad. It was Michael's note, tucked into Ethan's lunch bag months ago. William's hands trembled. He finally understood. To his son, Dad wasn't about DNA. It was about presence, the person who showed up, listened, and stayed. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, "I took away the only father he's ever known." At dawn, William made the call. His voice shook as he spoke. "Michael, it's Ethan. He's not well. Please, he needs you." There was no hesitation on the other end. "I'm on my way," Michael said simply. Within the hour, the familiar hum of an old sedan rolled into the driveway. Michael stepped out, still in his chauffeur's uniform, as if he'd never left. When he entered the boy's room, the air shifted. He sat beside the bed, taking Ethan's small hand in his own. "Hey, champ," he whispered. "You kept me waiting too long." No response. He began to hum softly, the same tune he'd used to calm Ethan during car rides, the same rhythm that made him feel safe. A simple melody, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of home. At first, nothing changed. Then Ethan's fingers twitched. His lips moved slightly, struggling to form a sound. "Dad!" The word was barely there, fragile as breath. But it was enough. William stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down his face. Michael smiled through his own. "That's it, buddy. I'm right here." The boy's eyes fluttered open, meeting Michael's. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. And in that smile, William saw everything he'd spent his life chasing: love, loyalty, family, all in the hands of the man he had once dismissed. Spring sunlight spilled through the wide windows of Brookfield Children's Hospital. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of flowers from the courtyard below. Ethan sat upright in bed, small hands clutching the toy car that had never left his side. His cheeks were brighter now, his eyes full of quiet peace. Beside him, Michael Carter adjusted the boy's blanket, humming the same gentle rhythm that had brought him back. Across the room, William Drake stood silently, hands folded, watching. For the first time in his life, he didn't see a chauffeur. He saw a man who had done the impossible, not through wealth, but through love. When the doctor entered to check on Ethan, he smiled. "He's a strong one," he said. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." William nodded, voice low. "It's not me doing it." He looked at Michael, and their eyes met. No words passed between them, just understanding. A week later, the Drake mansion was open again. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, laughter echoing in the halls. Guests gathered on the lawn for the annual foundation event, cameras flashing, reporters waiting for a speech from the man known for power and precision. But that day, William Drake spoke differently. He stepped up to the podium, his son standing beside him, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard. "There was a time," he began, "when I thought loyalty was something you could buy. I thought respect came from position, and love was something that simply happened by blood." He paused, scanning the crowd. "I was wrong." He turned slightly, looking toward the back where Michael stood, modest suit, hands folded, eyes down. "I fired a man who had already given me everything," William said. "Not his service, his heart. He didn't just drive my car, he carried my family." A murmur spread through the crowd. Cameras flashed, capturing a moment money could never stage. William smiled faintly. "So, from this day forward, he's no longer my employee. He's family, and to my son, the man he calls Dad, thank you for teaching me what that word truly means." Applause rose, honest and loud. Michael lowered his head, emotion tightening his throat. When Ethan ran to him moments later, wrapping his arms around his waist, he lifted the boy easily, holding him close. William stood watching, his pride replaced by peace. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the estate, the three of them stood together in the driveway. The old car gleamed under the fading light. Ethan reached into Michael's pocket, pulled out the keys, and handed them to him with a grin. "Let's go home, Dad." Michael looked at William, who nodded with a quiet smile. The engine started, smooth and steady, the same sound that had carried their story from heartbreak to healing. As the gates opened, William whispered to himself, "Family isn't about who you hire, it's about who stays." And for the first time, the richest man in the city finally felt whole. If stories like this remind you that love and integrity can't be bought, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next story, where quiet loyalty silences arrogance and true worth finally gets the respect it deserves.